Strange New Worlds created an Enterprise tradition that Star Trek, TNG broke. Star Trek, Strange New Worlds introduced a Starship Enterprise tradition, but it was broken by the time of Star Trek, The Next Generation. Directed by Jonathan Frakes and written by Catherine Lynn and Bill Wolkoff. Star Trek, Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 7, Those Old Scientists, was a comedic crossover with Star Trek, Lower Decks, where ensigns Brad Boimler, Jack Quaid, and Beckett Mariner Tawny Newsome of the 24th century USS Cerritos time traveled aboard the 23rd century USS Enterprise. The time travel dilemma of Star Trek, Strange New Worlds crossover involved ensigns Boimler and Mariner being stuck in the 23rd century. The time portal on the Starship Enterprise found on the planet Kralmuth lost power when Mariner accidentally sent herself to the past to find Boimler. After Boimler and Lieutenant Spock Ethan Peck were unable to synthesize more heronium, the time portal's power source, Mariner and Boimler came upon a solution hidden on the Enterprise itself. As Mariner and Boimler explained to Captain Christopher Pike Anson Mount and the Starship Enterprise's senior staff, when a new starship is constructed, a piece of the previous starship bearing its name is hidden inside it. This meant there was heronium from Captain Jonathan Archer's Scott Bakula NX-01 Enterprise hull aboard Pike's starship. This starship tradition is a retcon introduced by Strange New Worlds, but it doesn't continue into Star Trek, The Next Generation's 24th century. Star Trek, Strange New Worlds starship tradition is a retcon that can't apply to the USS Enterprise D in Star Trek, The Next Generation. Unfortunately, Captain Jean-Luc Picard's Patrick Stewart Galaxy-class starship couldn't contain a piece of its predecessor, the USS Enterprise C. As revealed in Star Trek, The Next Generation's classic, Yesterday's Enterprise, the USS Enterprise C was destroyed 20 years before the D was launched. Thus, Picard's starship can't contain a piece of Captain Rachel Garrett's Tricia O'Neill Lost Enterprise. However, the USS Enterprise C could have honored Star Trek, Strange New Worlds tradition and contained a piece of the USS Enterprise B. The Excelsior-class Enterprise B was launched in 2293 as seen in Star Trek Generations. Captain John Harriman's Alan Ruck Enterprise was the successor to Captain James T. Kirk's William Shatner USS Enterprise A, which survived into the 25th century in the Fleet Museum on 8th and Prime. The Enterprise C may have been built with a remainder of the Enterprise B's hull. The bridge of the USS Enterprise has always been more than a command center. It's a crucible where personalities collide, friendships are forged, and philosophies are tested at warp speed. Across Star Trek's many incarnations, the Enterprise has stood as a symbol of Federation ideals and human potential. Yet, as familiar as this legendary starship may be, its legacy is marked by evolution and occasionally disruption. Strange New Worlds, the recent prequel series that chronicles the adventures of Captain Christopher Pike and his crew aboard the USS Enterprise, has rekindled a specific tradition that defined the spirit of Starfleet's flagship during its earliest missions. This tradition, a deep emotional and philosophical synergy among the captain, first officer, and chief medical officer, helped shape Star Trek's identity. It was a triad of personalities in tension and harmony, a balance of logic, compassion, and command. But intriguingly, Star Trek, The Next Generation TNG, often hailed as the franchise's pinnacle of storytelling, broke this tradition. While it introduced its own innovations and timeless characters, it departed from this foundational triad, and in doing so, fundamentally changed the dynamics of the Enterprise bridge crew. The classic triad, a tradition born in TOS. To understand what Strange New Worlds restored and what TNG abandoned, we have to revisit the original series TOS. The classic triumvirate of Captain James T. Kirk, First Officer Spock, and Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy was not just a command team. There were three facets of the human condition. Kirk, the bold and intuitive leader. Spock, the embodiment of logic and reason. McCoy, the emotional moral compass and advocate for compassion. Together, they debated ethics, challenged each other's worldviews, and reached decisions through a kind of emotional dialectic. Spock and McCoy's philosophical arguments were the crucible in which Kirk often found his course. Their friendship and friction created a dynamic that was as important to Star Trek as warp drive or phaser blasts. This triad wasn't accidental. Gene Roddenberry, the franchise's creator, leaned into it deliberately. It reflected an internal balance, a narrative triangle that allowed the show to explore abstract ideas through personal relationships. And for many fans, it became an unwritten rule. The heart of the Enterprise was its captain, flanked by logic and emotion. Strange New Worlds, a return to form. Enter Strange New Worlds, a series set just before the events of TOS. It not only resurrects the optimism and episodic structure of classic Trek, it also revives the triumvirate model, this time with Captain Christopher Pike, First Officer Una Chin Riley No. 1, and Dr. Joseph Mbenga. This new triad isn't a carbon copy of Kirk Spock McCoy, but the echoes are unmistakable. Pike, like Kirk, is an instinctual leader guided by empathy and foresight. Una brings cool-headed logic and tactical clarity reminiscent of Spock. Mbenga, a war-scarred but deeply compassionate physician, anchors the team with emotional intelligence, much like McCoy did. In several episodes, the series directly leans on their interaction. They debate ethics, support each other emotionally, and help Pike navigate thorny moral dilemmas. Whether it's deciding how to intervene in a pre-warp civilization or grappling with the trauma of war, the dynamic among these three provides both dramatic tension and philosophical grounding. Strange New Worlds doesn't just acknowledge the triad, it enshrines it. It treats the tradition as something fundamental to what the Enterprise represents, not just advanced technology, but evolved humanity. The Next Generation, a different kind of crew. When Star Trek: The Next Generation launched in 1987, it boldly stepped into new narrative territory. Its captain, Jean-Luc Picard, was cerebral and diplomatic, a stark contrast to the swashbuckling Kirk. The Enterprise D was a floating think tank filled with specialists who rarely stepped on each other's narrative toes. And the classic triumvirate? It was conspicuously absent. TNG had an ensemble cast. Instead of a clear triad, authority and wisdom were distributed. Commander Riker served as a classic first officer, but didn't offer the same philosophical opposition or emotional contrast to Picard. Data, the android striving to understand humanity, occasionally acted as a stand-in for Spock's logical perspective, but he wasn't second in command. Dr. Beverly Crusher was underutilized in the moral discussion arena. Her rapport with Picard was subdued, complicated by a shared past, and rarely sparked debate. Instead of the vibrant emotional clashes of TOS or Strange New Worlds, TNG offered consensus. Picard often made decisions in private or after consulting a group in the observation lounge. While efficient and more realistic in depicting modern leadership, it lacked the theatrical, character-driven energy of the original triad model. Why the triad matters? One might argue, isn't it good that TNG did something new? Absolutely. Star Trek thrives on reinvention. But there's something uniquely powerful about the triad structure that Strange New Worlds understood and brought back. It's about storytelling economy and emotional accessibility. The triad gives audiences 3 touch points to process the ethical quandaries at the heart of Star Trek. Logic, emotion, and command interact in a tight orbit, offering tension and resolution within a single scene. The characters challenge each other, and by